When grieving limb loss, the obvious loss isn't the biggest one. Can you guess what my greatest loss was? It may surprise you. With something as life-altering as amputation, loss comes in many forms. Prosthetic limbs and adaptive equipment can help fill the physical void left by a lost arm or leg. But how do you put a band-aid on an intangible loss? Everyone can see the physical loss, but this is more than a drastic change in body image. I find myself asking, what's inside? What's at the heart of my grief? Within the confines of my disability, a permanent mobility impairment feels like a loss of physical freedom. All the little things, being able to walk to the bathroom in the middle of the night, jumping up to answer the door, are no longer taken for granted. Physical loss morphs into something more profound when it cuts you off from things you love and the life you knew before. It looks different for each of us, but the same emotions are at the center. Excitement turns into disappointment, happiness to grief, hope-filled dreams to acute pain. In high school, I did broadsword. When I moved away for college, I began Aikido, then later added on Taekwondo. Martial arts wasn't just a fun hobby. It was my greatest stress reliever during intense years of trying to medically stabilize my special needs daughter. Even less athletic activities are going to be impacted by pain, depression, or difficulty getting up and down, including for annoyingly small things like grabbing the remote. The batteries are out. Financial barriers in the form of medical bills can make it even harder to participate in former hobbies. When your loss prevents you from doing the things that relieve the associated stress, the grief compounds. Disability is a long chain of domino effects. When depression or physical barriers keep you from doing the things you love, it's easy to lose touch with the people you used to do them with. If your experience is like mine, you'll find that some friends do their best to support you, but others disappear. One friend kept in touch constantly in the days leading up to amputation, then abruptly cut off all contact the day I became an amputee, and ever since. I can only assume it's because the thought of having a body part cut off was so disturbing or awkward that they didn't know what to say, and so said nothing. The amputee isn't the only one grieving, and different people show it in different ways. More often, former buddies don't intentionally distance themselves. Rather, their lives go on, but mine can't, so I feel left behind. While experiencing isolation in my personal life, I simultaneously became an object of attention everywhere else. You might not consider the loss of anonymity, but it's real. I can't even buy granola bars without people noticing. It makes new amputees feel like they're on the outside of society looking in, and heightens awareness of the overarching loss. The life I had before is dead, along with my leg. Everything from my daily routine, my hobbies, my friends, finances, and overall sense of well-being has been impacted. I grieve for the time I've lost. Years of my life have been spent in hospital rooms instead of living. Everything I do is a reminder of how badly things went wrong. It's hard to ignore the unending string of, if only I hadn't done this, or if only I'd done that. I've had to work through the grief process and learn to accept that even though this isn't the life I originally had in mind, it's how things are. I can either fight against it, or I can embrace it and try to thrive in new and different ways. This brings us closer to my greatest loss. You see, prior to limb loss, the most important things in my life were God, family, serving others, and martial arts. While I'm blessed to have had only one of those shaken, the loss still reverberates within me because it's a loss of identity. I used to say, I am a black belt. I'm a martial artist. Athleticism was intertwined with my identity. If someone needed help, I was the first person to show up and get to work. Now I'm the one being constantly helped. Imagine if Luisa in Disney's Encanto became disabled. What if someone who buckles and bends but never breaks suddenly finds herself broken? Who is she then? And who am I now? An amputee? Someone who's defined by a physical trait rather than inner fire? In Aikido, my sensei didn't use colored belts. On the journey to a black belt, Wearing a white belt taught humility and emphasized the mentality of always learning. Whereas colored belts emphasize moments of achievement, long-term white belts emphasize the journey, and it isn't over yet. Yes, health permitting, I do want to see what I could do as an amputee martial artist. But more importantly, when I reach the end of my story, who will I be? My black belt isn't just a sign of my personal journey. Woven into it is ancient symbolism. Before the modern advent of colored belts, a martial artist simply wore a cotton belt. The more the practitioner trained, the more the belt yellowed with age, morphing into brown, then finally black from literal blood, sweat, and tears. But the real metamorphosis is when those dark outer qualities are rubbed off by a rough life, revealing the white inner purity of a beginner. Rephrased, transformation is brought about by loss. If you see a martial artist with a belt that looks old, white, and frayed, you can bet they've persevered through a lot of hard experiences. Likewise, amputees have times of feeling broken, torn, and tattered. What's left after you've lost what defined you? My greatest loss isn't martial arts. It's my self-identity. But unlike my physical loss, this is something I have power over. The opposite of loss is creation, and the opposite of being a victim is making choices, even if you can't control everything. So I've consciously decided to create a new self-identity. My pain points helped me identify the core pillars of who I am and what I value most. Isn't it ironic that my grief provided a blueprint for healing? Now my focus is strengthening those core pillars. Having lost one, I don't want to lose another, and I refuse to let amputation take away my faith or family relationships. The way I express my core traits, such as serving others, looks different now, but the essence remains. If anything, it's grown more potent. People say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I disagree. It's our choices that make us stronger, and I'm choosing to be a better person than I was before. My life is harder post-amputation, but it's also more rich and meaningful. That has nothing to do with circumstances and everything to do with who I decide to be. It's natural to shiver in the cold of changing seasons as our dreams fall and die, blown away by an unfeeling wind. But I believe in the promise of spring. My past life left an indelible imprint. I can remember it while still letting go of the pain overshadowing it. On the other side of grief is hope and a new life. So what's inside? Perseverance, compassion, love, empathy, pain, but also joy. My greatest loss after amputation was my identity. But my greatest gain is a new identity I forged for myself. Today we talked about the emotional domino effect of my amputation. If you want to hear about the physical domino effect, check out this video. And whatever you're going through, hang in there. You've got this.